Chairman, it's Emma Code, meeting producer. I can confirm that the live stream has now started.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Well, good morning, everybody, to our Airport Consultative Forum meeting on March the 25th of 2021, and this being our last meeting of the current administration. Just before we start today's business, I would like to outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the democratic officer will advise you. The vote will be taken by roll call and the result announced by the Democratic Services Officer. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm, the procedure for today's meeting is that the member of the committee who wished to speak on an item should indicate by using the chat function and by putting an X in the box. This will also be monitored by the Vice Chair, Paul Wills. Any members not on the committee or unable to use the raise your hand feature who wish to ask a question should indicate by typing in a box, and if that fails, maybe turn your camera on and start waving at the screen. Before I start today's business, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask the committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral divisional organisation that they represent. On a personal note, I'd like to say it's been a great pleasure to chair this panel for the last couple of years, and it's been a bit of an experience. The first year was proper meetings, and the last year we've been doing digital meetings, so it's been quite a wide-ranging experience for me, and I'd just like to thank the other members of the committee who have put their faith in me to allow me to continue to be chair. So thank you very much, and we can continue, Rowena. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call your name. Please confirm your name and your electoral division or the organisation you represent. Suzanne Featherstone.
Suzanne Featherstone, Colham Parish Council.
Thelma Sorensen.
Thelma Sorensen, Cornwall Business Partnership.
Ian Watkins.
Ian Watkins, Cornwall Aviation Heritage Centre.
Nick Weston.
Nick Weston from Western Aviation.
Rebecca Harnett.
Rebecca Harnett from RAF St Morgan.
Marshall Kinnear.
Marshall Kinnear from RAF St Morgan.
Richard Spencer Breeze.
Richard Spencer Breeze from Cornwall Aviation Heritage Centre.
Councillor Rushworth.
Councillor Rushworth from the division of St Izzy and St Judy.
Councillor Wood.
Councillor Wood from Roach Division.
Councillor Kenny. Sorry.
Good morning, Joanna Kenny, Newquay Pentire.
Guy Blackford.
Sector Inspector for Newquay and St Column.
Councillor Wills.
Councillor Paul Wills, Cornwall Councillor for St Column, but representing St Column Major Town Council on the forum.
Councillor Monk.
Councillor Ollie Monk, representing Newquay Trelodden.
Councillor Desmond.
Councillor Philip Desmond, representing Poole and Tahidi.
Zara Dinnacoombe.
Zara Dinnacoombe, Fly Newquay Pilot Training.
Councillor Brown.
Good morning, Councillor Jeff Brown, represent Newquay Central, Cabinet Member for Transport.
Thank you. We also have the following officers present. We have Melissa Thorpe, Interim Head of the Spaceport, Pete Downs, Director of the Airport, Simon Mansell, Legal Governance Team, Graham Scrimger, Cornwall Development Company, Anna Druce, Community Link Officer, and myself, Rowena Brebner, Democratic Officer. I think we've just had an extra person join the meeting, Margaret North. Margaret, can you confirm your name and the organisation you represent, please?
Hi, my name's Margaret North. I'm a Newquay Town Councillor.
Thank you. That's everything, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt? Councillor John Fitter here, Cornwall Councillors Morgan and Colan.
Sorry, thank you. Didn't notice you joined yet. Thank you.
Ah, well, I was here 1 minute past. Thank you.
And good morning to you, John. Okay, so that's the introductions done. Can we have the apologies for absence, please, Rowena?
We have apologies from Steve Murdoch and Ian McElworth.
Okay, item number 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Anyone got any declarations of interest? You do that as and when. Okay, that's fine. Item number 3, public questions. Any public questions, Rowena?
We have one public question, Chairman, from Richard Spencer-Breeze, and the directors of the Cornwall Aviation Heritage Centre would like to ask what steps are Cornwall Airport Limited taking to assist its tenants to survive and recover from the impact to business from the 2 trading years of coronavirus pandemic and to support their transition to the new trading environments in the hopefully post-COVID landscape. We haven't got a response right now, but a written response will be provided as soon as possible after the meeting.
Okay, I take it that's okay with the chaps from the Aviation Museum. Is there any other public questions from members of the public who are present or wrote?
No, that's the only question we received.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so item number 4 on the agenda, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of December 2020. I'd just like to propose those for noting.
I'm happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
I'll do a roll call vote for that, Chairman. Please indicate if you're for, against or abstaining when I call your name. Suzanne Featherstone. For. Selma Sorensen.
For.
Ian Watkins.
For.
Margaret North.
I'll abstain because I wasn't in attendance.
Okay, Nick Weston.
For.
Councillor Fitter.
For.
Rebecca Harnett.
For.
Marshall Kinnear.
I'll abstain, I wasn't in attendance.
Richard Spencer-Breeze.
For.
Councillor Rushworth.
Abstain, not in attendance.
Councillor Wood.
Abstain, not in attendance.
Councillor Kenny.
For.
Guy Blackford.
I have to say I didn't hear what the question was. I've just got an instant coming and I've been listening to.
We're just voting on the minutes of the last meeting, whether you're for.
Oh, sorry, I'm for. I've read those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wills.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Desmond.
I'll abstain. I wasn't present at the last.
Zara Dinnicum.
I'll abstain as well because I wasn't present.
Okay, those are still carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fitter has his hand raised, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you want to ask if he has a point of order or.
Who was that? Sorry.
Councillor Fitter.
Councillor Fitter.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to go back to the question that was just asked. Can I ask for you, sir, that as it will be a written reply, can all the members of the forum be given the written reply when it's received and not have to wait until the next meeting of the Consultative Authority?
I think that's a very fair request. Rowena, can we ensure that happens?
We can. I'll send an email round and publish them as an addendum to the minutes, so they will be publicly available, and I will send them round to the forum, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments on the minutes that we've just voted for? If not, I'll go on to item number 5. This is a yearly review of the Constitution, and I believe Simon Mansell's here to go through this. Is that right in that, Rowena?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The report before you is fairly straightforward. It is the annual review of the Constitution, as the Chairman has said. Members were canvassed in January this year whether they wish to see any changes to the Constitution. no changes were received. We have tried to update the users of the airport over the year, and that's covered in the report because EasyJet has been added. But other than that, the Constitution stands as approved by the Forum in June last year. It's fairly straightforward, Mr. Chairman, but I'm happy to take any questions if members have them.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mansell. Any questions for Simon Mansell regarding the changes? Okay, I guess we need to propose and vote these through. Rowena?
Yes, if someone could propose in a second that the Constitution be approved with no changes.
Okay,
Joanna
good.
Kenny, I'll propose.
Thank you, Joanna.
I'm happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. So we've got a proposer by Councillor Kenny and a seconder by Councillor Wills. Rowena, do we want to do a roll call?
Yes, I'll do a roll call. Suzanne Featherstone. Can you indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining from the vote for the Constitution? Suzanne Featherstone. Okay, I'll come back to her. Thelma Sorensen.
For.
Ian Watkins.
For.
Margaret North.
For.
Nick Weston.
For.
Councillor Fitter.
For.
Rebecca Harnett.
For.
Marshall Kinnear.
For.
Richard Spencer Breeze.
For.
Councillor Rushworth.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Kenny.
For.
Guy Blackford.
For.
Councillor Wills.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Desmond. Councillor Desmond. I'll come back to him. Zara Dinnicum.
For.
Suzanne Featherstone.
For.
And Councillor Desmond.
Apologies, abstain. I wasn't present.
Thank you. Yes, that's carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Fitter has his hand raised. Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Fitter, or is that a new question?
I do apologise, Mr. Chairman, it's a legacy hand. I will remove it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the review of the Constitution approved. Now we move on to the item number 6 on the agenda, which is the Airport Operations Management Report. You should all have a copy of this. It was an extra PDF on the site itself, but it's been emailed out to everybody, so hopefully everyone's got a copy of it. And we have the Airport Operations Manager to make the report, or whoever is making that report.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. It'll be me again. We're in the process of appointing a new head of airport operations. So I can assure the group that in due course, hopefully by the next meeting or soon after, that they will be able to hear from someone else other than me on this. But in this instance, I'm happy to take the forum through the operations manager's report. It's a fairly thin report this quarter, simply on the basis that the airport has been closed to passenger services for much of the period, and I've provided some detail on that for those who may not have been aware of the specifics of that in the general overview. It's worth pointing out that just on the on 1.1 on health, safety and compliance, given that the operations have been fairly limited, I'm pleased to say that there are no staff or customer incidents to report during this quarter, and no operational incidents that need to be reflected here either. So I appreciate what we're doing here is at a time when things are changing very rapidly. We're covering a period that's now a few weeks into the past. So I'm happy to ensure that we spend time at the end of this on any questions that any members have about any developments since the time that is covered here. But just to go through operationally the period, I think as most people are aware, we have been into second and third lockdowns, which have had significant effects on passenger demand, on people's ability to travel, and of course airline decisions as to what they operate to and from the airport during that period. However, we have throughout this period maintained, albeit on a reduced hours and service level basis, aerodrome services for those users that have needed to continue to make use of either the aerodrome or air traffic services, and that's helped us to that sort of reduced hours, limited days of opening has helped us to continue to mitigate operating losses whilst providing those essential services. But we've obviously in that period of time continued to look after both employees that have been furloughed and employees that have been partially furloughed and in and out of the business to look after their well-being and of course look after their safety. Obviously we're now shifting quite significantly in our operational focus towards the planned and prospective reopening to passenger services. That's something that is continually moving in line with guidance and advice on when certain parts of the economy will reopen, and decisions being taken by airlines commercially on a week-to-week basis around planned restart dates. I'll talk a little bit in the commercial update about, or in the business update, I should say, about what that means in terms of the current thinking around the reopening of the airport to passengers. But things are very busy behind the scenes in terms of recruitment and readiness as far as building the business back up to welcome passengers again. As I'm sure the forum can imagine, there's a very long lead time in terms of either employment of new staff or bringing existing team members that have been furloughed back into the business to be ready, trained, compliant and prepared to welcome commercial services again. Aviation security, really no change from the last meeting. Aviation threat level is still at moderate, but of course there are many security aspects to consider in line with preparations for G7, and that's a significant work stream for myself and a number of other members of the forum also. As far as movements are concerned, I've reported there the total air traffic movements during this period. You can see that after what was essentially a fairly normal summer in terms of movements, obviously the imposition of a second and third national lockdown have led to a significant reduction in flying activity again, above and beyond what would normally be expected during the winter months. But I'll sort of assume that that's taken as read unless there are any specific questions at the end. Moving to 3.1 in terms of noise complaints, we've reported those that we've received during the period, one in November, no complaints received in December, and another in January. Likewise, in terms of wildlife and habitat management, there were no wildlife strikes reported during the quarter. On-time performance statistics, for what they are worth, I've included them here, but it must be noted that we're talking about a very small number of flights that operated during the period. So as would be expected, there is a very high level of punctuality, and then we've reported that in chart format in the report as well. Likewise, I'm afraid on the passenger feedback, essentially given the much reduced, vastly reduced number of passengers that have been carried during the period, about 97% down on the same period last year. As you would expect, there's been a limited level of customer correspondence, but I have summarised in the passenger feedback summary what those inquiries have comprised. and essentially very much around what flights are operating and why. And then a further request in January around just some general information on flights and passenger services. So as I said, a fairly slimmed down report in reflection of our slimmed down operation during this period of time, but I'm more than happy to field any questions that anybody might have about that or any other aspect of the airport's operation.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see I've got a crossing the box from Paul Wills. Can all members please, we're using crossing the box function as the first point of call. So Paul, Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Pete. Obviously, great news that the government are going to be investing in upgrading the airport ready for the G7. That can only be a good thing. That will also help, I'm sure, with our spaceport aspirations as well. It's been a very difficult time for you and, of course, the staff at the airport to keep everything going, as it were, whilst mothballed. And I take my hat off to you, and I congratulate you and the staff for doing so. My question really is to do with jobs and retention of staff. Obviously, during the lockdown, a number of staff were offered other jobs within the CoreServe group. Haven't any of those actually now come back to the airport? Are you recruiting completely fresh new staff, or have you managed to retain some of those staff that are obviously qualified, know the job, went off to do other work? Have they been invited back?
Absolutely. So there are certain requirements we must abide by in terms of how we recruit, and we must make those job adverts available to all applicants. But clearly, we are very keen to see those that left the business during the very difficult period of the first lockdown in July and August. Expressing an interest in coming back and rejoining us. That's I think it's sensible for everybody. They're local residents. They know the airport. They know the business, and we will be able to get them trained and ready much more quickly than we would somebody from outside of the industry. So there is a focus on ensuring that we encourage as many former airport staff as possible to that we make them aware that there are these roles that are now being recruited, and we bring them back in where we can. What helped us during the previous quarter, obviously, like many businesses and all those in the aviation sector, we had to make decisions in July and August on the assumption that the furlough scheme was ending at the end of October, and that was very much the working assumption until the 11th hour when it was extended. But when that happened, it did give us the ability to stem any further redundancies. So whilst passenger numbers have been far less in the period since October than we imagined they would be, even under even with an awareness of COVID, that reassurance of the extension of the furlough scheme did allow us to ensure that there were no further job losses, and we're in a much stronger position as a result of that, because we've kept as many staff as possible in the business, and we're now working with them to ensure that first and foremost those that have dropped down to reduced hours get back up to full-time hours, all those that want to, as soon as we possibly can, because we know that this has been a very difficult time for those that have been furloughed, and we want to bring them back to some form of sort of normal working arrangements as fast as we possibly can. So yes, it will be a combination of ensuring that we maximise opportunities available to existing airport staff, but we also have a very close eye on those that have perhaps left during the past year, who will see the very exciting news, as you say, of the G7 and new airlines coming in, as I very much hope an opportunity for a fresh start and to get back into the airport, and hopefully they can have some confidence about its long-term future that may perhaps not have been there in the midst of the first lockdown, when there was no sense of when travel might return.
Thank you very much for that, Pete. That's a very concise and full and detailed answer, and I'm delighted that you recognise the importance of trying to get some of those staff back in at the airport. And once again, many congratulations to you and the staff for doing an excellent job during this lockdown of keeping everything ticking over at the airport in readiness, hopefully, for it going back to some kind of normality in the not too distant future. It's a credit to you and to the staff at the airport, and I thank you on behalf of very grateful people of St Columbia Major and outlining area. Thank you.
Many thanks, Councillor Wills. I'll pass those kind words on to the airport staff, who I know will be really heartened to hear that support.
That's great. Thank you very much there, Councillor Wills, and thanks, Pete. Councillor Brown. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to echo the thanks of Paul to Pete and the team for the phenomenal work they've been doing whilst we've been closed down, so that we're ready to reopen and really springboard back into action. Particularly, special thank you to Lucy Mace, who's done a phenomenal job in securing the AGOS scheme, which I'm hoping Pete might tell you a bit about in a moment. And could I just ask Pete, on the G7 7.85 million, we've employed a specialist contractor to make sure that that work is effectively delivered on time. If you just give a little bit of background to that. Just for an update, I had one complaint from a gentleman who booked a holiday with Ryanair in April, was most concerned because he couldn't obviously travel and they weren't going to give him his money back. And whilst I was preparing the reply, Ryanair pushed his start date back to May, so he was very happy about that.
Yes, indeed, we've had a few of those, and we've been sort of working with customers, knowing that whilst flights had until very recently been on sale from the 28th of March, that clearly it was unlikely that they would materialise. So we've been working to try and help customers where we can. We obviously can't always intervene on their behalf, but we can provide as much guidance as we do have in terms of the likely operating program. Yes, on the AGOS scheme, which is the Airport and Ground Operators Support Scheme, which is a sector-specific support scheme that was announced originally in November by central government, but opened in February, administered by the Department for Transport, that allowed some limited government financial relief for airports and associated businesses. In our case, that was capped at our business rates liability, which is around about £453,000. But I'm really pleased to say that we had confirmation literally in the past 48 hours that application has been approved. And those funds will be received. And thank you, Councillor Brown, for your kind words about our finance manager, Lucy Mace, who led that engagement with DFT to a successful outcome. And we should be receiving those funds before the end of the financial year. And clearly, in the position that the business has been in, they will be extremely helpful in terms of supporting our ongoing challenges in our work to reopen. The final question on G7 works. Yes, I'm sure all of you will have seen the good news from central government of £7.8 million worth of airport-related funding. Most of that is for infrastructure around the parking areas, the aprons, and the taxiways to ensure that world leaders attending this Cornwall summit can touch down at Cornwall's airport, which is I think really important for all of us connected with the airport that happens. Work has been underway for some time in preparation for the approval of those funds, so that we can begin work on the ground without delay, and that is happening as we speak. And we do have some specialist subcontractors being appointed by Cormac, but it's important to note that the overwhelming majority of this work will be undertaken by Cornish companies, and it will be supporting Cornish jobs. Whilst it is specialist airport work, we're very fortunate that through the Corsair Group, we've got wide-ranging experience of airport infrastructure work now over a number of years. And so despite the extremely tight timescale now of delivery of those works. We're very fortunate that we've got the right resources and the right people to call on here in Cornwall to get that work done.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before I bring in Councillor Rushworth, you've got an ideal map behind you. So I was just wondering, for the money that central government are actually providing towards this, what would you, on that map you've got, what's going to actually happen? Are we just talking like a new resurfacing all of it, or what's going to happen on that?
So
that map?
I can sort of move to one side and give you a sense of the areas that will be developed. In the main, it is what was the disused runway, so the runway that runs from almost the edge of the side of the airport where the air traffic control tower is and where the village is, across to RAF St Morgan, and the associated apron that connects with that disused runway. What that will give us is a couple of very large areas where the kind of wide body aircraft, the 747 type aircraft that some world leaders will be coming from further afield in, that gives us the ability to unload and disembark those aircraft in quick succession, and to have those aircraft remain parked securely on site for the duration of the summit. I think everybody knows that we've got a very long runway at the airport, and that enables us to undertake quite a wide range of activity. And without that, we couldn't accommodate these arrivals. But it is important that once landed, that there is the appropriate areas for those big aircraft to maneuver into, so that the delegations can disembark, and then the aircraft can be moved to an area where it can be securely parked for the duration of the summit, and then those aircraft can be loaded and departed again in quick succession. So most of the work is along that what was formerly the crossfield runway that is now disused. It's effectively bringing the surfaces of those areas back into commission so that they are again certified for use. And the fantastic thing about that is open up a number of areas of the airfield for development, and allows us to really have a platform to bring in the next generation of aerospace, aviation businesses that want high quality premises with access onto the runway. And this really is quite game-changing for us in terms of how much of those areas will be brought into CAA standard that can be used by aircraft of any size. So yes, it's very important in delivering the summit, but the exciting thing for me and everybody connected with CAL is what it unlocks in terms of the long-term ability to bring some of those investments forward and bring more businesses to the airport, which all contributes to that wider viability and to the airport's recovery from the pandemic. So it'll have benefits for years to come, which is great news.
Yeah, it's a really good bit of news for the future infrastructure and for the future of the airport. Yeah, great stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Rushworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Pete, hi. I acknowledge and concur with all the comments and praise that Councillors Paul Wills and Jeff Brown have given. So I'll go on to my question. Of this money that's coming in from the government to do these improvements for G7, how much of that work is part of what would be required for the spaceport? Also expanding on what you said about the business park, would this give us any ability to increase traffic flow for passenger services coming into the airport in the future when the world gets back to normal?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's in a slightly different area of the airfield to that is proposed and planned for the spaceport. What we're talking about for G7 is largely what we call the Gulf apron. whereas the plans for Spaceport are very much centred around the Echo apron, which is this sort of large circular apron slightly further south of this area. But I think what it does give us is more flexibility around the manoeuvring of 747 size aircraft, and so that clearly will be a good thing in terms of providing both flexibility, redundancy and contingency around the long-term future of Spaceport. So when we talk about, and I won't steal the thunder of my fantastic Spaceport Cornwall colleagues that are at the meeting and will be talking a little bit later on, but it gives us options for the long-term future of Spaceport as we look to bring in additional customers beyond the initial Virgin Orbit launch. So there's no direct link at the moment to those Spaceport works. But again, what I think it does is opens up opportunities for us to look at things in a different way, just because those infrastructure works will have been done and the asset will be enhanced. So yes, it's absolutely positive from that point of view. And in terms of what it will do for the passenger operation, it will certainly make things more efficient because it's creating additional ground movement areas for aircraft. So it will give our air traffic controllers more flexibility in terms of how they move aircraft around on the ground, which will potentially reduce taxi times to and from the terminal. That will be good in terms of playing a small but important part in lowering aircraft emissions from ground movements. And at times, it sounds strange to talk about congestion with passenger flights when the airport is busy, because it's so far from that at the moment, but it will be there again, and we will have weekend periods in the peak summer again where the airport is quite busy with passenger services, and these extra areas will give us I think the ability to improve punctuality for passengers at that time. So it will have a benefit on that front as well, for sure.
Thank you very much. And when I got the Sky announcement for you all, as it's relative to what we do, that an RAF jet based in Cornwall has just crashed after the crew ejected. Military sources say, you're probably aware of it, but it's just been announced officially.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Rushworth. Councillor Smith, John.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Pete. Pete, I think it may be appropriate, given the excellent and wonderful news that we've had relating to the government's largesse in giving us this money for enhancement of the airport, which will continue long after G7. I thought you might like me to prompt you that it's important that we pay tribute to Nigel Blackler, who's worked incredibly hard to get this money down. And he certainly really burnt the candle at both ends, and not only that, but negotiating the PSO as well. So he is one of the unsung heroes at County Hall Truro, who has really been incredibly hard and working hard. And he took the trouble to brief me for an hour last Friday on what was happening, etc. and so forth. And I think that you, Pete, might like to pay tribute to Nigel Blackler and all the support that Cornwall Council officers are giving the airport at this critical time.
I couldn't associate myself more strongly with those sentiments, Councillor Fitter. I think Nigel Blackler and his team at Cornwall Council, throughout my short tenure at the airport since the spring of last year, and I know for many years before that, have worked tirelessly, often behind the scenes, for the benefit of the airport and connectivity in Cornwall. They've been a constant source of support to the CAL team really throughout the pandemic, but particularly in terms of these most recent times around the PSO and around the securing of investment in the airport for G7. So I absolutely concur with those sentiments, and we would be delighted to put on record CAL's thanks for all of that work. And if I maybe bold enough to say so, I think it's an excellent example of where the council, the Corsair Group and the airport working in partnership towards a common goal actually has really delivered benefits. I think it's a great example of where that working across the group and the council has really delivered benefits in terms of those that operate the airport and those that have those connections into to DfT and government to get what I think is a fantastic outcome for Cornwall.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, and I'm very generous of you to acknowledge the work that that Nigel has done on your behalf and on the board of the airport, because he is one of the unsung heroes. So thank you very much indeed for that. And many congratulations. And also, may I publicly thank you on behalf of the community of Corlogus for the engagement you have now set up with them to try to address one of their concerns. It's very difficult, to satisfy your customers and then satisfy the residents. And certainly I understand now, unfortunately I missed the last meeting last week, but they're very grateful and positive for your reaction. And certainly they feel they have a much better relationship with the airport now than they did in the past. So many thanks for that, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate that. We're making progress there, but there's long-term engagement required, and we acknowledge that, and we're very much on board with having that dialogue on an ongoing basis and communicating with the community, not just around the current challenges, but around G7 and the return of the airport to normal operations. But appreciate the kind words, John.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fitter. Councillor Kenny, Joanna.
Thank you. I couldn't endorse the comments about Nigel anymore. My original question was basically there was some talk about a £500,000 rebate on the airport business rates. Is that the same money that has gone to fund the AGOS?
It is, yes.
Right. Okay. Did you name the two aprons? One of them was Echo. What was the other one?
Golf.
Golf.
Like golf apron.
Okay. And I think the question is probably more aimed at the Spaceport people, but I think the question we're really asking about the money is it going to mean that we have to spend less on the Spaceport? But perhaps I'll leave that until we get to the Spaceport query.
Do you want to answer what part of it you can?
I would agree that it's probably a question that's most appropriate for my colleagues at Spaceport Cornwall.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo all the complimentary notes that have been provided for you, and the success you've achieved in maintaining the operation of the airport so far. I know it's been a difficult time. I'm a very big supporter of the airport. I think it is a vital strategic infrastructure item for Cornwall as a whole. And so there have been difficult times. There's been financial support. We're still working out how that's going to be profiled between capital and revenue and the like, and your loan profiles and so on and so forth. But going forward, what I would like to know is this. Has there been an impact assessment undertaken as to the net cash value or introduced into Cornwall as a consequence of this G7 operation, specifically centred on the airport, and the contribution of the airport to Cornwall's GDP? I appreciate that we're going to hopefully get back to normal with all the flights that I'm looking forward to, and the impact, I think, is going to have some legacy consequences. So I'd very much like to know what that impact might be, the positive impact might be on cash introduced directly into the economy and future GDP. And a second question is this, a very simple one really. Have you reprofiled the layout of the reception and the like at the airport to account for all the media circus that's going to turn up? Have you got a media centre? Have you got a reception centre? Have you got red carpets, flags? Have you got everything you might need, or is that something that's going to follow on from some other venture?
To take the last question first, there's a provision within the funding that's been provided for all of those additional elements of ensuring that the operation runs smoothly for the summit. We benefit from having an extremely large airfield site as a whole and having access from both sides of the airfield. And whilst I can't go into too much detail from a security perspective on exactly how the arrivals and departures will operate, I can provide some assurance that we are not having to accommodate everything through our very small terminal building and through the access on that side of the airfield. I think that's probably all I can say on how the logistics will work, but we're working in very close cooperation with the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office and the Cabinet Office and Number 10 teams, many of whom are on the ground working on the detail of those plans. And so we're not alone in our work in terms of preparing for this. We've got a very wide-ranging team of support, both from the Cornwall end and from the government end, to ensure that some specific areas such as media management, as you very rightly point to, are resourced, are managed, and most importantly are safe and secure. So yes, everything from media to red carpets to the equipment that we will have to bring in to service all of the and handle all of the aircraft is all well underway at the current time, to make sure that aside from just the infrastructure on the ground, that we have all of those other hard and soft services that are required to make sure that things run very smoothly on the day. And there will be a great deal of rehearsal and sort of practice planning in the weeks leading up to the event to make sure that those plans are robust. I think in terms of the wider economic impact of the works and of the income from G7 on the airport, that is, I'd say that's a work in progress at the current time, simply because of the pace at which things are developing and the fact that we're only a few days into confirmation that funding for the works will be provided. But clearly, it will be very important that we reflect the capital investment into the value of the airport, and as you rightly say, we reprofile the wider GDP benefits that the airport can now provide off the back of the G7 legacy. We did that work very recently, as recently as the summer of last year, in partnership with Nigel Blackler and his team at the council, to look at the wider GVA that the airport generates, which was at that time estimated at £62.7 million. And it will be an important exercise in terms of defining and measuring the legacy benefits that we look again at that and get clarity on how much that can be enhanced by what's being done over the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll just come back on one aspect of that, if I may.
Certainly.
On the media circus, in inverted commas, I've had a number of comments about, well, this is wonderful, but it's going to really screw up our roads and make life very difficult, isn't it? Because they're going to have all these black limousines running around with sirens in front and behind. And I've tried to reassure those commentaries by saying that this is going to be incredibly well organised. Most people will be landing and using helicopters to go around the place, and probably you'll see some great big aircraft carriers offshore as well. But is there some reassurance you can provide to the public at large that the impact on the day-to-day operations of normal people will not be too badly affected by what's going to happen?
So my responsibility is very tightly defined around what happens inside the fence at the airport and ensuring that element of the operation is running smoothly. I know there's a very comprehensive set of processes beyond my area around highways in particular, as you mentioned, that is underway, and I know there's some engagement with the local community taking place later today around questions that residents may have for for the police and for the council. I can't comment on anything beyond the perimeter of the airport itself, because that's the area that we've been tasked with. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to provide assurances beyond that. But I know that there are a wide range of processes underway looking at those, the logistics of that, and I hope dealing with the concerns that the residents may have and answering some of those questions. Apologies, I can't say any more than that, but I'm not sort of read into some of those other plans and qualified to say so. I have enough of a challenge on my hands, just ensuring that what happens inside the fence at the airport is running as smoothly as it possibly can.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much. I noticed we've got a hands up from a gentleman. I think it's, who is it now? Is it Richard?
Richard Spencer-Breeze, Chairman.
Yes, Richard.
Hello, Chairman. Thank you very much. Hello, Peter. I put my hand up because it's very relevant to this particular time, this particular subject on which you've been speaking. So first off, I'd just like to say offer our support for you for the job you've done in managing the airport through this incredibly difficult time. It must be a great relief to start seeing some very positive things happening, especially with this funding from central government. Now, you've spoken about the funding from central government being largely directed to the refurbishment of the disused runway area. And I just really wanted to ask a question, because we are one of the few agencies that makes use of part of the disused runway area, as we have a license to position our 2 large aircraft there at the current time. And I had just a series of questions which you can probably answer all together very quickly in relation to that, which are, first of all, there's an enormous amount of work going to need to be undertaken in that area in a short period of time, imminently. We would very much like to help and facilitate that work. And is there anything that you are going to need from us to achieve that? Secondly, are there implications with regard to the refurbishment of that area as to the location of our large aircraft? And connected with that, those large aircraft are used for education and training for local colleges, MOD, specialist training organisations and so forth. And we just would like to be able to apprise them of implications for their activities in the coming year.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Richard, for your kind words and for those questions. In terms of the resurfacing and rehabilitation of the disused runway, I'm pleased to advise that work will not be progressing as far down the disused runway as the location of the 2 large aircraft. It will be as far as the Gulf apron on the air side of the fence. Clearly, there will be access and egress into the area from that side of the airfield from a construction point of view. I will ensure that those that are putting those plans together as we speak and mobilising are engaged with yourself and your great team of the management group over there, so that you're aware of what is happening, and if there is anything required or anything that they would ask of you in terms of support, that they know where to go on that. In terms of the upcoming year, I think this is going to be very much a short-term exercise in the next 12 weeks. Beyond that, I think there are some opportunities for legacy benefits that could impact the Trelaw site. And once we've got greater clarity on what that looks like, we'll be making sure that we engage closely with all of our business partners over on the Trelaw site to understand how they can benefit from that. But the focus at this stage will be very much on the work inside the fence, to ensure that those surfaces are brought up to standard in readiness for the start of G7. So I don't anticipate any impact in terms of those aircraft. but clearly it's important that, that the contractors in particular who will be taking possession of the construction site are engaging with those around it. And if they haven't done that thus far, then we'll point them in your direction to make sure that A, they can keep you updated on what's happening, but most importantly, that if you have a question or a concern, then you can get straight in contact with those managing the site.
Thank you very much, Peter. Full answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. So if there's no more questions now on item number 6, we'll move on to item number 7, which is the business update report, which I guess, Pete, you'll be doing as well.
Yes, unfortunately, this is an encore from me. There may be a number of areas that we've covered in those questions, in which case we will we will skip past those in recognition of time. But in terms of the commercial performance during the period that we're reviewing here, again, it is a case, I'm sorry to say, of limited information to report, simply because much of the period was spent in various forms of tiered restrictions or lockdown. And so we saw an unprecedented level of decline in passenger traffic of 97.5% compared to the same quarter the previous year. And we have provided for illustration in the table a breakdown of those limited number of passengers across the months and done that by route. Clearly, that was clustered quite extensively around the Christmas period. It seems like a long time ago now, but many of you will remember the initial announcement that there would be a relatively widespread relaxation of rules on gatherings in the Christmas period, and that had led to, I think, some confidence in the market around forward bookings. And we were certainly seeing the prospect of some very full flights over the Christmas period. Obviously, that was in the end overtaken by the emergence of new, more infectious variants, and ultimately a reconsideration of those of many of those measures on relaxation, and that did have an immediate and very pronounced effect on not just new bookings coming in, but the cancellation of existing bookings as people quite rightly revised their plans on the basis of that advice and cancelled their flights. And obviously that led to a significant reduction in the number of planned flights over the Christmas period, and ultimately a closure again of the passenger terminal from the 3rd of January, when the scheduled flights that were in existence came to an end. There's probably not much more that we can say about that. We don't want to focus too much on what has been in the past, and rather look ahead at what is to come in 2021. So I've provided a wide range of details within 2.2 on route and network development. Obviously, we had initially had some optimism back before the turn of the year, probably when this forum met last, that Easter might be a date where things would be opening up. Clearly, that time frame has moved on, and most of our airlines, in fact, all of our airlines now have revised their plans back towards either the very last few days of April or some point during May in terms of a restart. It's very clear that the first round of reopening on the 12th of April is not going to be significant in terms of volume, in terms of many parts of leisure and hospitality reopening, and so that does not form a date on which many services will become viable again. So we continue to work very closely with our airline partners to plan for their restarts, and as I mentioned earlier, we're already taking steps to resource up within the operational areas of the business to ensure that we are ready for that. I won't go through sort of line by line the individual airline updates, but hopefully people who follow those developments will find that information informative. The only one that's probably worth touching on, which I think is a development since our last meeting, is the announcement that EasyJet will, after an absence of, I think, 6 years, be returning to the airport to operate services to Manchester and Glasgow. Those services had been expected to start in late June. They had been brought forward, I'm pleased to say, to mid to late May to coincide with what is planned in terms of reopening. But I must add that timelines are still very, very uncertain. You know, they are very much working on the basis of the information that is known at the moment, and everything, as it has been for much of the past 12 months, is subject to change, and I'm sure is likely to see change in one form or another. But I'd say beyond that, the overarching sense of how we sit for the coming summer is very positive. Clearly, there's a lot of comment and coverage out in the media at the moment about international travel and whether that will happen or not, and that coverage has probably become increasingly erring on the side of caution over the course of the past couple of weeks. We benefit as an airport from the fact that domestic traffic is very much the core of our business, in particular London and Manchester as two key markets, but really all across the UK. And so I think we have much to be optimistic about, that if there is another a prospect of another positive summer in terms of staycations, that the airport is well positioned now in terms of its carrier base to benefit from that, perhaps more so than it did in the summer of 2020, simply due to the fact that the timeframes of unlocking last summer were at such short notice that it wasn't really possible for airlines to respond and put capacity into the market quickly enough, whereas the capacity is there this year. And so I think we're as well positioned as we could be to ensure that we can get open again and really try and ensure that we do our bit for helping the visitor economy in Cornwall to have a really much needed summer boost coming off the back of really a year now of very, very difficult trading and extended periods of closure. I'll just briefly touch on, at the end of 2.2, the update on new operators and routes. Discussions on the London PSO, which I know again is something that's followed with great interest by a number of members, is continuing to progress. I think the anticipated service start date when we last met was probably the beginning of the summer season, which was this coming weekend. Clearly, that's not now going to be the start date. We anticipate that it will be into the late spring, very much in line with that government guidelines for reopening in England and what other airlines are doing. But we're increasingly optimistic that there'll be some positive news on that to come soon. Then just on the wider business, commercial activity that follows very closely passenger traffic has obviously been suppressed in accordance with the lack of any passenger flights over the course of the past few weeks. But there's still plenty happening on the property front around discussions on renewing existing leases and marketing of opportunities with existing sites, and also construction over in the enterprise zone, and notably the Payload integration facility for Spaceport Cornwall. And again, I'll let my colleagues from the Spaceport talk a little bit about that as part of their wider update. And just finally on marketing and communications, this has been an area I think that surprised us all at CAL in terms of how robust the engagement amongst our customer base has been with the good news on new airlines and returning airlines. But but also in response to some of the other activity that we've been putting out there just to keep awareness of the airport in people's minds. Clearly, once we move towards some certainty on reopening, that activity has to really pivot more to a conversion approach and more towards working with our airlines to drive bookings, drive passenger numbers and get return on investment. But at the moment, that's just about being prudent and saving existing budgets wherever we can, whilst there's still so much uncertainty around the precise restart dates. So that was all I had, Mr. Chairman, on the business update. But again, if there are any other questions that come from that, very happy to take them.
That's great, that, Pete. Thanks very much for that. Very, very concise. I'd be surprised if there's many questions. You seem to have answered pretty much everything I was dreaming up of asking you. So yeah, thanks very much for that. Any questions from the members? I'm not getting anything through at all. Is the chat box stopped working? No questions at all there, Pete.
Chat box is working fine, Mr. Chairman, but it doesn't seem that anyone has any questions.
No questions, Pete. Oh well, if we've got no questions, Pete, I'd just like to add to the thanks that you've already received as chair, and to thank you and your team and all the employees up at the airport for what must have been a really, really difficult and unsettling time for you all. And it's good to see that you seem to have adapted well and risen to any of the challenges that have been put before you, and it's very encouraging to see that you seem to be successfully integrating yourselves and working well with the core serve group as well. So that's very, very encouraging. And hopefully, I've never met you in the flesh yet, and hopefully at some point in the near future I'll get to see you all in the flesh. So yeah, thanks very much.
I hope so too, Mr. Chairman, and likewise for many of the members here. I do want to put on record my thanks to the forum. This has I've engaged with airport consultative forums at many of the airports that I've worked at in previous years, and I don't think I've ever encountered a group that are as passionate in terms of wanting the airport to succeed and genuinely supporting the airport authority and its team in terms of its work during the course of the past year to get through this very difficult period. I just want to be clear that support has been very much felt and heard by myself and the airport team, and is a real source of encouragement to us to know that we've got people on our side as we work our way through this, because as you rightly say, it's a team effort between ourselves, the council, the core serve group, and the community and all of our business partners on site. So thank you to everybody for their continued support for what we're doing.
Councillor Brown has indicated, I think, Mr. Chairman, that he may wish to ask a question.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Not a question, just an observation. I don't think when we recruited Pete to the post, either the demise of Flybe or COVID were part of his job description, but clearly we've got the right man for the job. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, cheers for that, Pete. So we'll move on to item number 8 on the agenda, and that is Spaceport Cornwall.
Hello, good morning. Yes, so Melissa Thorpe, I'm interim head of Spaceport Cornwall. Miles, our director, left us a few months ago, so there's a big empty desk behind me, which is still a bit of getting used to for the team. But a lot's happened over the last few months since we last spoke, so I'm just going to run through my report and I'll take some questions at the end, because I know from Pete's update that there will be some, so I will happily answer any of those. So really the last few months has been spent looking at alternative funding sources to gap fill the 5.6 million that was moved across to the airport last year. Some really positive progress has been made with that. Nothing that I officially can announce yet, but things are in good hands so far. And really, hopefully next meeting we'll be able to give you guys a bit more information on exactly what that looks like. Because I think out of that is some really exciting plans for the project going forwards. None of that is to do with G7 and the investment of 7.8. The funds that we have been looking at as a team was, a lot of those we were looking at long before we even knew G7 was even happening. So we're still exploring those. And as Pete said, that the G7 money, the 7.8 million, is just for some of the legacy elements at the airport, and a way that we can look at opening up some future opportunities in regards to launch operations from the airport. Pete also mentioned we have the satellite payload integration facility. The shell of that, the aviation center as it's known, is using Getting Building funds and some HCA money. That's going to create the shell up alongside Echo Apron. The Spaceport project, we will then fund the inside, the fit out of that, which will be basically a clean room laboratory space to bring in satellites for integrating into the rockets themselves. It will be a nationally unique facility that will be the first of its kind in the UK, and that's something that we're hoping will not just be used by Virgin, but by many other companies in the future. And we've already had quite a few inquiries about that. So we think that's going to be quite an exciting facility for Cornwall to have, and obviously will add value to the airport itself. Phase 1 airside infrastructure works that I think Miles mentioned at the last meeting are now well underway, and they're expected to be completed ahead of G7 in May. And that's the turn pads, fillets for the runway to handle the 747, which obviously will be used for G7 as well for any incoming 747s. All of this obviously is just to get the spaceport ready for launch early next year, and we have a spaceport readiness review at the end of this year, so we'll be looking at the spaceport with the UK Space Agency to see how close we are to launch. But we still have the plans to launch early next year, and we want to nail that date down in the next few weeks. So again, I'll come back with what that looks like probably in next meeting. And revenue is ongoing, deployed on the team, and also on our pre-license for Spaceport application, some of the feasibility work around that, which I can answer some questions on later on. So since we last spoke, great news that Virgin Orbit, as I'm sure many of you saw in the news, had their first successful commercial launch out in Mojave. It pretty much went seamlessly. It was amazing for our colleagues out in California, but also for us here in Cornwall, because it proved the technology, and it also gave us a lot of information and data on the launch that we can then, implement in our activities here. That will just make it more efficient for us to work with Virgin. It's also just helped, us build that relationship with Virgin, and they're looking at having their next launch this summer, but also then, working a lot more closely with us now to turn their focus over to the UK and Europe. So we've already started to see a lot more interest from Virgin in getting ready to launch out of the UK. So that was a huge tick in the box for us on our path to launch. The next big bit of news that's come out recently is the secondary legislation. We responded last year to the consultation. The response back from the government just came out a few Fridays ago, which basically almost finalizes what those regulations are going to look like. This is a really big step for us because it means we have something to work with now, which, going back to the first point about funding, we can now kind of start to look at the budget and see what we do and don't need to safely launch next year. So that's what the team's working on now. The regulations, I guess the main message from that is we can work with them. They're not perfect, but we never really expected them to be perfect, but we can work with them and we can safely work with them. And so again, we'll be working with Pete's team and the ops team up at the airport to make sure that we get moving along, because we're looking at the license will likely come out this summer, and what we want to do is be ready to put it in as soon as we can. So some things you'll start to see is our environmental impact assessment coming out, and safety case, and hazardous materials reporting. So you'll start to see some documents coming out from the team on that. The regulator is moving from UK Space Agency across to the Civil Aviation Authority. Again, being an airport, this is beneficial to us because we already have those relationships built in with the CAA, and conversations have begun with them to just look at what shape they will take for our airport. We have fought quite hard to say that we need to be treated as something that's already an active aerodrome, and we're not a vertical launch site in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. So there's a big difference to what the regulations will be for us. The other thing we've responded to just yesterday was the UK Space Agency put out a consultation for environmental objectives, and what this is going to do is just set the boundaries for what we'll be asked to do in part for our environmental impact assessment. So we've gone back to them from our perspective, again, back to the fact we're already an operational airport. We have a master plan. We've done an environmental impact assessment for that master plan for the airport. So what we want to look at is the additional activities that will be happening as part of launch and incorporating those into what's already existing here. So that's kind of the regulatory side and something that our operations manager, Luke Winfield, who we brought on just before Christmas, is very busy working on, along with Pete and air traffic over at the airport. Probably you've seen, we've been quite busy. Our education outreach manager, Dave, has been very busy with outreach, especially during the most recent lockdown. We've done a lot of home learning activities with students. We've reached almost 7,000 local Cornish students, running live broadcasts into the rocket factory out in California with Goonhilly and the UK Space Agency. So that's been a treat. We've worked with Cornwall Council on that through their education team there. We've announced our mascots. We ran a competition with local school children, and we think we almost had 1,000 entries come back, and Polaris, the Astro-Truff, was the winner. So you'll probably see Polaris out and about, and Polaris's sidekick, Laurel, which is a satellite. And basically the form that's going to take is just introducing children to space and space technology, but on a very localized level. So, you know, a local issue in Cornwall that Polaris is going to work with the satellite technology to help support a solution to. So you'll start to probably see a bit more about that, and that's, you know, gone pretty much mad already. We've been inundated with kids and schools. We've released a curriculum-based booklet that's gone into every school in Cornwall, and again has been really popular in primary school, and we're working on our secondary school one as well. So lots going on in the education outreach area. Events-wise, obviously quite quiet. We're not out and about as much, but we're online on panels and being invited to speak at international kind of forums every single month. We're planning to do something called SpaceCom in July, which potentially could be our first physical event, but we'll wait and see with that. And then really just our focus is now on G7, as Pete mentioned. And I think Spaceport Cornwall, we don't have anything official to talk about yet, but there's lots of plans going on behind the scenes. And that's really just focusing on changing perceptions of Cornwall, using Spaceport as a way to challenge those perceptions, and working with UK Space Agency, European Space Agency, Goonhilly, Virgin, and the airport at a series of events and announcements through G7 that will likely be online, but hopefully maybe a few in person as well, based across the airport, Cornwall House in Falmouth, and down at Goonhilly. So that whole theme behind that is going to be environmental intelligence, working with University of Exeter on their conference, and really just pulling in the idea of space and space technology to support the fight against climate change and the technologies that are being used to do that. So working on that, and you'll probably see a bit more about that in the coming weeks as well. But really it's just about the legacy and what we can create from G7 to push kind of some of these, you know, I guess break down the barrier between what people think about space and actually what the reality is happening on the ground. And the role of Cornwall in that, and how our aim to be the most sustainable launch location in the world, how we're going to achieve that, and what that actually could mean for the rest of the space industry if we go out and challenge other spaceports to do the same. PR wise, yeah, it's gone a bit mad as well. We've been inundated with a lot of interest on the back mainly of the Virgin launch, but also the announcement of G7. And I think just the pace that's picking up in regards to space in general, globally, whether it's SpaceX or Blue Origin, seems to be on the front of every paper at the minute. So we've kind of been pulled into that, but very much the message is, you know, Spaceport Cornwall is here to deliver a satellite launch by 2022 with our partner Virgin Orbit, and that we're working towards that, and that alone at the minute. But it's, in saying that, as Pete mentioned, really considering, you know, what's next, what's in the pipeline. We have another launch operator that we're working with and hoping to announce at G7. and other upstream businesses, again, launch related. But I think the real value that we've always considered is the using Spaceport as a catalyst to attract other space businesses, space applications, satellite technology to Cornwall. And I think that payload integration facility, that's what you're going to see, is not necessarily just Virgin using it. It's going to be much wider than that. And what we're aiming to do is use the magnet that is Spaceport and the profile of Spaceport to attract some of these incredible tech companies to Cornwall to create those 150 jobs that we've been quoting for a long time. And I think having a physical facility that they can come and do knowledge transfer and collaborate is going to be really powerful. So that supply chain work we're working with Aerospace Cornwall on, and in Cornwall Trade and Investment and Goonhilly to look at spreading that across the two sites and building on that excitement. And I think probably the last thing to really mention is that we are working closely with the other spaceports. I sit on the Spaceport Alliance, the national one, as well as the Global Spaceport Alliance. And I think despite what a lot of people think, we're not in competition with Scotland. It's very different, the two horizontal and vertical launch sites. We're going after for slightly different marketplaces, but also this is part of the UK launch program, whereas, you know, it's raising the profile of UK launch and also that proposition, because our competitors are actually in other sites in Europe more than each other. So that's picking up steam quite a bit, and we're starting to collaborate a lot more on what that can look like and share knowledge, but hopefully also assets in the future as well. So I think that's it in a nutshell for Spaceport and what we've been up to. And yeah, next meeting, I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about the funding itself and what we've secured, probably after PERDA.
Okay, great, that, Melissa. Thank you very much. And what I thought was a very interesting initial take of that is that potentially the first successful launch could be, or the first launch could be less than 12 months away. So yeah, exciting times, exciting times. Councillor Rushworth.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll have to. I can't get my photograph to my picture up. Melissa, thank you very much. Very comprehensive report. I've just got two very simple questions. Are we contractually signed up with Virgin now, or are we still on a memorandum of understanding? And I see you're talking to another launch operator. Are we going to have any issues if we get two different operators operating from the same airport? Have we got the capacity to cater for both of them regarding their security aspects as well?
Yeah, so the MOU with Virgin Orbit is still in that stage, but that's something that we're looking to transition into a more formal partnership with them. They do have obviously that commercial agreement with the UK Space Agency. So their main partnership, their main, I guess, approach is in with the UK Space Agency, and they have many milestones that they're on track with them, with us as their location. But that is something that we are working with, is that more commercial arrangement, and that again is something that I'll probably be coming back to this forum to explain in the near future. That was always under the guise that we were looking for that first launch to happen, which has now happened. So again, that helped kind of open up the conversations with them. Other launch operator, we always said that Virgin Orbit would be our anchor tenant, but that them and us are both open to having other launch operators on site. The one we are speaking to, it is very different from what Virgin are doing, and they don't actually require anything additional than what we already have now. It's just that getting that regulation, that space flight regulation through, that will allow them to operate within the UK. So we will obviously have to come back for approvals in regards to them, but we will like to announce our MOU at G7 and then start that process from there. But in many of the other spaceport sites in the UK have started to identify future operators. I think the main goal behind this is just to grow as the market grows. And with our spaceport, and when the license is secured, we can then look at, once we've proven that capability to launch, we'll start to see other operators very interested in using the UK. But it's securing that first launch, securing it in the UK, so that we can get that marketplace and that window of opportunity that is decreasing with competitors over in Europe, that we can get that legislation through this summer, get our spaceport license, secure that first launch with Virgin, and then that will just open up the door to many other operators.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Kenny, do you want to?
Thank you. Couple of questions. One about money. I mean, I understand that the G7 money is not directly contributing to us getting our license, but it will be a sort of launching pad for space businesses of the future, which is great. Now we have the regulations, or more or less have the regulations. We sort of anticipated a £12 million spend for Cornwall Council, depending on what the regulations were. Do we have any indication yet whether we're going to need, whether we will need all of that 12 million, or indeed whether we need any extra? And my final question is on the Spaceport Satellite Payload Integration Facility. Do we have a whizzy name for it yet? Because that's what we need.
Yes, yeah, we do. But that's part of this potential funding that we are securing. Then the name is a bit more whizzy, I promise. I'll be excited.
Actually, in the light of the fact that many of us may not be here at the next meeting, let's be realistic, it would be nice to have an idea of what that whizzy name was.
Okay, yeah, we'll see what I can do and see if I can kind of hint at it.
Yeah.
I'll take that away. But yeah, I'm tired of saying that as well. So it'll be good for me. At least an acronym will help. Yes. So regarding the regulations and the funding, obviously we've been asked to look at alternative sources of funding to secure that 5.6 million. That is always just been to get us to that first launch and to make the airport safe and capable to deliver that first launch. At the minute, that hasn't really changed. There are areas within the regulations and we've just got them back. So that's exactly what the task we're looking at the moment behind the scenes is taking the budget that was approved by full council and looking at the regulations and seeing where there may be areas of opportunity that we can either decrease or shift some of that budget around, because the nature of the funding that we've hopefully just secured means we're creating a facility that's beyond just with Virgin, and we can open it up to wider business uses as well, which I think it was something that we always were hoping to do in the future, but at this time we can start to do that earlier on as the attention and the profile of Spaceport is here now. And I would say a couple times a week we are being asked by other space businesses to locate on site, whether that's at the business park or other places or at Goonhilly. So to have a facility up on the airport will be really powerful for us. And G7, the question, sorry, what was the question about?
No, it wasn't a question, it was a statement. So effectively, so effectively, whatever the regulations say, we're liable to be spending the 12 million, but we may not be spending it on what we originally intended to spend it on, because there are ongoing expenses or investments that we need the money for.
It will all be for the same, the same budget lines as we said. Some of it just might move from one bit to the other. It's all for improving the airport infrastructure to get to launch. So all of it will be based on activities on site at the airport, and just creating that capable launch facility for us. So it's just a matter of, for example, fire appliance, if we need an additional one or not, where we had budgeted for an additional fire appliance, well, maybe we can now use that for upgrading the apron works that we didn't think were the same amount. So we're just refreshing that, and that's something that will go back through the cabinet or the council processes to make sure that everybody's happy.
Does it need to do that? Is the council process, is that specific?
To do with the procurement of it all, yes. Yeah. So not anything fully beyond the full process that we were through before, but it's just looking at the procurement plan and exactly what activities we'll be undertaking and where the capital money is being spent.
Fair enough. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Fitter.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Melissa, a couple of, or sort of three questions really, if I call it. One, an observation. I think that the payload integration facility is the name that the airport is using. They call it the Aviation Centre, and so I don't think it's it's certainly not confidential. So as far as I understand, they were calling it the Aviation Centre. And the second thing is just purely on the funding question, and you're working to a budget, obviously. Are you actually up at the airport at the moment in your offices? And if you are, do we know whether the rent is being paid on the office suites that you're occupying? I'm not quite sure what it is. And the last thing is, I was surprised to see that and advised, and I went and spoke to the men, that a triangle of land that is on outside sort of the perimeter of the aviation centre, and it's a big product, which I understood we were keeping to use as a gate guard site for an aircraft. And there was some talk about Rosemary being put there. That was the Shackleton that's over the other side. But it's now, I understand, being prepared as a wildflower meadow under your instructions. And I just wondered, in actual fact, how this came about and what was the background to it, because certainly I, as a local member, hadn't been advised, and I think I possibly should have been. So there we are, the 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take the first one. So the Aviation Centre is the name of the shell building that Cal is building at the moment, and will be done towards the end of June. The fit out inside of that is the payload integration facility. So that is the spaceport element of that build. So combined, they will be this new WYSI title that I'll come back to you with. So really, it's just the Aviation Centre is the shell. And the way that the funding is going to work is that we will be kitting it out inside and fitting out with the clean room and all the kind of high-tech equipment that we need to do that integration. And then when those are joined up, when we go out to industry and talk to our customers and stakeholders, it will be known as a new title, bringing them all together. But it's 2 separate kind of funding streams that are going into building that. So that's why you've seen the Aviation Centre name as well as the other one. Funding the offices, I'm in the offices today just because we are up on site with some of the works going on. But these offices are the marketing suite for AeroHub, the Sector 2 building. We were always in here with it being under the guise that it is the marketing suite, and people do come and have a look at it, and at the point where there might be a commercial use for this in the future, then we'll have to find a new home. We are paying rent on it at the minute as the team out of the Spaceport project. The triangle, yes, you're right, it's wildflower. So that was part of our kind of biodiversity in our sustainability action plan that we're looking at doing, and it was brought forward to enhance the site for ahead of G7. So I've been working with Nigel. Obviously, he's been doing the St. Austell Link Road. We're looking at replacing the signage because it's a bit of a disaster on the AeroHub. So I'm working with Matthew Bowles and just kind of enhancing the presence of Spaceport and AeroHub ahead of G7. So the wildflowers on the 2 verges coming into the site was agreed by Nigel a couple of weeks ago, and it's on site quite quickly because to plant them and get them here for June, we had to basically spread the seed yesterday and today. So Cormac has been supporting that with leftover seed from the St. Austell Link Road, Eden, and it's working with Eden Project within the National Wildflower Collection. And that again is just to look at some biodiversity alongside Spaceport, which is actually coming out of our marketing budget using funding that we didn't go to shows for this year. So that's what that is from. And yeah, I can happily answer any questions on that, but Nigel's the one that kind of gave me the go ahead for that.
Yeah, could I just come back to you then? It's something I'll take up because it avoids the question of the land was actually sort of put aside and marked off for the gate guard aircraft, for the aviation centre and the space centre. So I'm not quite sure why we've got it there when we've got plenty of land inside around the building where you're in at the moment, which could easily be set aside for the nature and the biodiversity. So I was sort of quite interested in why we're sort of doing it there. But okay, I appreciate thank you for your explanation anyway. And one last thing, of course, is that if you're quitting out the the aviation centre, which is the frame of the building, and you're putting a lot of kit in there. I was always under the impression, and I think Miles had said that the potential tenant, the Virgin people, would probably only use this facility for possibly 21 days when they come in prior to launching the satellites, and then they go away again. So am I to understand that they will continue to pay the rent for this facility while they're not using it? Because if you're putting a lot of expensive kit in there, it can't really be used for another purposes, which I was advised and told it would be used for other people and other things. So I just wondered, are they going to then rent this and pay the rent on it even when they're not there?
Yeah, so as you said, Virgin will not be using it the entire year, and very much so we have a list of people that would like to use it when Virgin aren't here that will definitely benefit from that kit. And it's not bespoke enough to just Virgin. It's what has much wider benefits to other companies as well that can use it. So what you'll see hopefully quite quickly on is what we always said is revenue generation from this project, and that's one area that we're looking to create some revenue in the future. But again, the nature of the funding that we'll be likely using will probably make a bit more sense when we can announce what that is and the kind of structure behind how that's going to actually work. But it's going to be quite flexible in the sense that other space satellite companies will be able to use the facility. So what we want to do is create that kind of buzz of activity up there, even when Virgin are not here, to make sure that this isn't just solely based on Virgin being there. And there's quite a bit of room still on the site, Councillor Fitter, for if we want to look at bringing the Shackleton down, as I know you had discussed with Miles in the past. So I'm happy to have those conversations. And the reason why can't plant the wildflowers on any of the plots here is that if they go to be developed, then it becomes a bit of an issue, as they've seen down in Hale with Natural England not being too impressed if there's biodiversity on the plots themselves, and then it's going up for development. So that's why we've kept it to the green spaces so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Wills.
Yeah, Thelma Sorensen had her hand up before me, Mr. Chairman, so Thelma might like to go first, and I'm happy to come in after Thelma.
Certainly, Thelma.
What a gentleman, thank you. Just a very short comment to start with. Melissa, I want to congratulate you on your grasp of the complexities of this project. Amazingly complex, and you seem to be very much on top of it and achieved a great deal. I just want to know, will G7, Spaceport's going to feature at G7, will there be an active participation by Virgin Orbit? Will there be any physical attendance from Virgin Orbit?
Yes, well, thank you first of all. It's been definitely jumping in the deep end, but I did work on the project since its inception, so I have definitely been soaking up a lot of it for the last 7 years. Yes, so G7, definitely there will be a Virgin Orbit presence. What that looks like is something that we're hoping to hear about in the next couple of weeks as well. But whether that's quite a big presence or a smaller one, there will be Virgin officials and people, and potentially some assets of theirs here for G7. They're very excited about it, as is the President of the United States, in actually writing a letter to support Virgin Orbit's partnership with us and wanting to make the most out of showing how the US and UK relationships are working. So yes, you will see them here.
So we can't be sure of seeing Richard Branson then?
Well, I don't know. He's publicly said yes, he will be here, but I guess it just depends on COVID restrictions and what the actual activities are.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thelma. Now bring in Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I'm sure many people are aware, over the last 4 years, when we debated Spaceport at Council, I've been somewhat sceptical, I can say, in that time, mainly because I was concerned that the technology hadn't been fully tested. But I'm absolutely delighted that Cosmic Girls test and actual launch in America has now proven to be successful. And so that's altered my opinion greatly. It was something I was desperately waiting to see happen. As Jeff will tell you, Jeff Brown, you know, we were promised it was going to happen 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, but it's finally happened, and that's great news. And I am now fully supportive of our spaceport program. It can only be a good thing for Cornwall. Now the technology has been proven to be successful. That's a huge leap forward in my book. And I am now supportive of it, and I think it's going to be a great thing. That's all I wanted to say, really, Mr. Chairman.
That's great. Thank you very much, Councillor Wills. I've got a couple of questions as well, Melissa. I share Councillor Wills's thoughts about it. We're all really wanted it to happen, and we've all been desperate to sort of see the successful. And when it came quicker than I thought it perhaps would do. And it was a fantastic moment, and when it actually successfully deployed, I think launched 2 satellites as well. So that's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, my questions are: if you can give some sort of timeline on the employment opportunities and the apprenticeships that could potentially be on offer, you know, for some of our young adults across the county. I'd specifically like to know your plans on that. One of the concerns I've had is when you see SpaceX, everyone else's boosts, you know, they take off and they land and they can reuse them, and they don't end up being trash in the ocean or wherever they end up landing. So, and I'm very keen to make sure that at the earliest opportunity that the booster module from Virgin Orbit is going to be collected, reused, or reprocessed or recycled. So I'd just like to know what the actual plans are for that. And the building name, from what you actually said, I sort of got the impression that perhaps it's going to be a branding name perhaps by the operator, and it might maybe under some sort of sponsorship deal, which is fine if it's a busy name like Joanna said. So I'm just wondering if you could clarify that. And then lastly, the other potential launch operators, you mentioned that they'd be operating something completely different to. But still space related to the Virgin Orbit. So I'm just wondering if that is the case, and so it will be space related but something different, which means if it is, I could probably make a decent guess if I chose to. So I'm just wondering if you could answer those questions. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, apprenticeship wise and some of we actually have an apprentice joining us next week, working through the Cornwall Council scheme, and we're looking to bring her on the team and help us with the project in general, with the future plan that she will succeed Mandy when Mandy goes off to play golf full time. So yeah, so that's just the start. We have a few master's students joining us this summer, working on environmental uses of satellites from Exeter. We also have applied for a couple UK Space Agency apprenticeship programs, which hopefully we'll hear about soon, and they'll be joining us again this summer. And that's just for our team alone. Obviously, the wider opportunity and the job figures are based on the companies that will be coming to use the facility. But we're working with both colleges very closely on developing a kind of entrance point into the industry, because you know what we've always said is there's a skill base in Cornwall, but we need to grow that. So when we go out to the primary schools, it's not just about exciting them about the opportunity, it's showing them the exact pathways into the industry and into the businesses. So that's everything. Those technical pathways is something that Dave's working on incredibly hard with the council and with the colleges and with the universities, so that from the baseline we're already starting those conversations, as well as getting our own apprentices. But the businesses that will come and operate from the site will then have their own programs, and it's incredibly supportive in the space industry. It's something that everybody wants to see, because we're in dire need of these youngsters coming into the industry very quickly before we run out of engineers, especially. I think the beauty of what we're doing with this spaceport is the jobs that we need are crossing everything. It's not just satellite operators and space technicians, it's aircraft maintenance, it's you know, data and AI through Goonhilly, and you know, so it's such a variety of jobs that it won't just be pinpointed on one area. So that's just something, again, that Dave, and he's got some great designs coming out to showcase what this looks like visually, almost where's Wall-E type visual of the airport and what each person will potentially be doing to take that into schools and to explain that. So yeah, it's just really exciting, and we're incredibly excited about that and bringing on our apprentices. Reusability, yes. So obviously the carrier aircraft is reusable. Cosmic Girl Launcher 1 at the minute, the first stage does drop into the ocean with pretty much every other space launch there is. Even SpaceX parts of it do end up in the ocean. We've looked at with our carbon impact report that we did with the University of Exeter. We looked at ways that we could go out and retrieve it, but actually the impact of going out and retrieving it at the minute is actually worse. And we've taken data that have come from rocket labs down in New Zealand, and what they've seen down there is the marine habitat that is actually forming around the artificial reefs created. So we have been looking at that, but the long-term goal with Virgin is 100% reusability of their system. So that's something that they're technically working on, because we've stated we want to be the most sustainable launch location in the world, not through just mitigation or offsetting, but through bringing down that impact altogether. So the technology, whether that's through biofuels or whether that's full reusability of the rocket. So that's something that we want to support here in Cornwall, and that's something that Virgin obviously are happy to have some help with. And when we do have them on site, that is something that we want to use this new facility to start to look at, is how can we use some of the engineering expertise in the UK to start to think about how we can fully reuse that rocket. And then in regards to the time, did you say it was a timeline of, what was your fourth question?
It was, well, there was two final things. One of them was if you could expand upon the different launch operator or the.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other launch operator is still horizontal system, and it's satellite, but it's looking at a return system. So coming from space back down to Earth, and the handling of that, and the handling of what's on board that, which is is amazing, of what we can do for the scientific community, for academia in the UK, for the health industry especially. So it's more looking at microgravity research rather than just satellites. So that's a bit more of a hint of that system. But that system works very closely with the United Nations as well. So it's a very interesting story, that one, that we're really excited to work with them. But you'll, like I said, hear a bit more about that.
Okay, and then finally the building name. So is it not going to be branded by a company?
Oh yeah, no. It's going to be
or something like
no. It's let's just say it's a centre of excellence type name. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Brown has commented, but I don't think there's a question there. Is there anyone else got any other questions for Melissa? That's fine. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it. I think it's well, item number 10, date and time of next week meeting. Rowena.
Chairman, just we have also got Ian McElworth's report, which, although he's not here to present it, if there were any questions, if anyone could indicate, and then I could take those back to him. And then yes, the date and the time of the next meeting, if I can find my agenda, is Thursday the 24th of June at 10 AM, and it's very likely to be another virtual Teams meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so just to recap, yeah, the Aerozone Hub, Ian McElworth not in attendance, but he has submitted a report. So if anyone's got any questions on that, if you can just forward them to, email them to Rowena, unless they really need to speak now. Okay, so that's item number 10 done. I've not got any other business. So unless anyone's got anything final to say, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to chair this forum for I think the last 2 years now. So yeah, thank you very much for your support, and thank you very much for attending. And here's to the future, and hope to see as many people around this committee in the next few months. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wills.
Chairman, it's